But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, they own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. To get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. It's a big club. And you ain't in it. By the way, it's the same big club they used to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on. The fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day.
Hey, what's up, fellow slaves? So as you can tell, today we're going to be talking about marijuana legalization in New York, and I guess in New Jersey, and essentially what happened to it. Now, the reason why I'm covering this topic is because I think it's a perfect example of how the government doesn't really give a crap about us. And it's also a perfect example of how the media, how the mainstream news, will write articles to pacify the public. They'll write articles to cover for politicians instead of to expose politicians. So the whole purpose of the news is not to work alongside politicians, but to criticize them, to expose them. But I guess the fourth branch of government, just like the other three branches of government, are just an illusion. Let's get into this article. So in March, both states seemed days away from a landmark legalization deal. Now, inertia is feeding doubts that it can happen this year. And as we can see, the article was written by two people. Now, the reason the New York Times gives it at the bottom, the reason why they say it was written by two people is because one person was reporting from New York and one person was reporting from New Jersey. As if information travels on horseback still, and as if the two can't just travel to the other state using a car or something. I think that it was written by two people because they needed two people to work on the rhetoric. They needed two people to master the rhetoric. And say, hey, you buy this bullshit, right? Yeah, I buy this bullshit. Oh, no, but this bullshit over here, we should change this bullshit here because people won't buy this bullshit. That's the real reason I think that it was written by two people. Or it's just that people have become this bad at writing that you actually need two people to write one article. A push to legalize recreational marijuana in New York and New Jersey this year appears all but dead in both states, a dramatic fall for an effort that just over a month ago seemed inevitable. And it did. It really did seem inevitable. It seemed like, hey man, we're definitely going to see legalization this year, and it should be a step towards freedom. But that didn't happen. For months, the two states were locked in a race to legalize, vying for millions in tax revenue and progressive bragging rights. That's probably all they really cared about, because just before this was the 2018 election, the governor election. So that's probably what it really was. They just want to brag, oh, we're going to legalize. No, we're going to legalize. Vote for us. Not that it really matters because very few people turn out for those elections anyway. But at the end of March, the campaign in New Jersey abruptly collapsed, hours before a vote was supposed to take place. What do you mean abruptly collapsed? What is it, like the Twin Towers? It just abruptly collapsed. Yeah, some jet fuel got in there and caused it to collapse at free fall speeds. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, New Jersey's failure had a coattail effect in New York. It emboldened opponents and eased pressure on some of legalization's most important allies, including Governor Andrew M. Cuomo, who had declared legalization a priority for the first 100 days of the session. And yeah, he did. I mean, he seemed like he was really serious. Almost as serious as Trump appeared to be about being an outsider. They both are very good actors. I gotta give it to them. The best actors are not in the movies now. They're politicians. Seriously. So, yeah, he declared legalization priority for the first 100 days. It's incredible how a person can go from being so serious about legalizing, and he was all like, oh yeah, it being illegal has hurt our communities for too long, and he was saying all the right things. He had all the talking points, just like Trump had all the talking points in his 2016 election down. But as that deadline approached, Mr. Cuomo declared that negotiations were too complicated. Within days of New Jersey's failure, the effort in New York too was shelved. What do you mean negotiations? Who are you negotiating with? I mean, I could have sworn that, these are politicians. It's very simple. You say, hey, this is for the public good. We need to legalize this for the public good. That's simple. There's enough facts out there to show that, yes, it's actually in the public's best interest to have this legalized, just like it was in the public's best interest to end alcohol prohibition. But yet they say, oh no, negotiation, we got to negotiate with who? I don't know who they're negotiating with. They're too complicated. They're just so complicated. Our big brains just can't handle it. We got to just end it. It goes on. I love this line right here. Democratic leadership in New Jersey, including Governor Philip D. Murphy, has remained focused on an upcoming budget battle and an investigation into tax credits. Like, wait, what does this have to do? Is this like, are you guys trying to excuse him? It's like, oh yeah, he has this bigger fish to fry, an upcoming budget battle. It's like, wait a second. The way that they were going to legalize in New York and New Jersey had to do with the budget. They were going to legalize it through the budget. So how is saying that Governor Murphy has remained focused on an upcoming budget battle, how is that an excuse for them dropping marijuana legalization? It just baffles my mind. This is what this guy said. It's basically the same old, same old. And then it goes on to say, people are talking less. There's still a chance. There's still a chance that legalization could break through. No, there's not. So then the article goes on to say, 2 influential lawmakers in New York plan to introduce a new bill this week tailored to win Mr. Cuomo's backing. And activists are organizing a last-minute push. It's like, what's going on here? I mean, I've heard people joking about how Cuomo acts like he's a king, like he's the God King. But I mean, this really sounds like the writing here really sounds very anti-democratic and very pro-God King Cuomo / monarch. We need to win the monarch's backing. We can't do this without the monarch. I mean, this is absurd. And in New Jersey, the proposal sponsors have discussed changing the current bill, including removing an expungement provision that would have cleared conviction for people who were caught in possession of up to 5 pounds of marijuana. But the same challenges that doomed the previous effort remain. Let's see what these challenges are, right? A well-coordinated coalition of opponents, including law enforcement officials and parent-teacher associations, has warned skittish lawmakers of public safety consequences. Really, what public safety consequences? Let's look into this. Let's see what this coalition of liars, it should just say liars, go change it to liars. Well, let's see. I mean, according to this Newsweek article, does legalizing pot increase crime rates? It hasn't in Colorado and Washington, a study has found. And not only did it find that it doesn't increase crime rates, it's actually really funny. Because it could have said, this article, and this actually just goes to show Newsweek, another mainstream news site, another thing that we're part of the fourth branch. We're an authoritative source. Yeah, we're that authoritative source. You gotta bow to your authoritas. So let's see what it says here. Right? No, I'm sorry. What I was gonna say was this title. It could have said, "Does legalizing pot decrease crime rates?" And it could have said, "Hell yeah, it does." But instead, they word it like this because once again, these people are in the same bed. These guys are all criminals. They should all be charged. I mean, who was it? Socrates. He was charged. And he was made to drink poison for supposedly corrupting the minds of the youth, right? Of course, that was in ancient Greece. Of course, he wasn't really corrupting the minds of the youth. But we should have something like that. We should have a law. We should have a law where they're corrupting the minds of the masses, and they should be put to death just like Socrates was put to death. Oh no, you're extreme, John. Really extreme. No, what's really extreme is this rhetoric being allowed to be pushed onto the masses. So the article acknowledges that a study published in the Economic Journal in 2017 found that states on the U.S.-Mexico border that legalized medical marijuana saw a decrease in violent crimes of 5.6 to 12.5%. Basically between 6 and 12% reduction in violent crimes. However, if a new study is anything to go by, this drop in crime is not consistent. So it just shows that, oh yeah, it's not consistent in Colorado and Washington. Legalizing recreational use of the drug appeared to have little to no effect on the number of violent and property crimes. So then the article goes on, and it doesn't actually address this study. But then they say this, right? The effects appear to be marginal. It's like, wait a second, you haven't covered any of the effects. If they exist in the first place. Even here, it's like, wait a second. Can you guys not talk out of 2 sides of your mouth at the same time? So you say here, the effects appear to be marginal, which means that there are effects. But then you have the nerve to say, if they exist in the first place. Well, clearly they have to exist in the first place if you say that they're marginal. And then it says, the only exception to this rule was the rate of burglary in Washington, which declined following the legalization of pot. So then it says there were slight increases in property crime in both states and aggravated assaults in Washington immediately after legalization, but these were short-lived blips rather than permanent shifts. So then this Newsweek article goes on. It basically says nothing. It says nothing else about the studies. It doesn't really give an indicator of what the study actually found. It doesn't give any percentage of reductions. It just says that they're marginal, if they exist at all. I don't know how you can say those two things. But the article does have this thing at the end. It says, and this is quoted from the Assistant Professional of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Washington State University. He says, "This is but one study, and legalization of marijuana is still relatively new. But by replicating our findings, policymakers can answer the question of how legalization affects crime." Oh, really? So that means that they don't need to listen to a coalition of liars. Really, no way. And what's incredible is they'll listen to the experts when it comes to draconian measures and giving themselves more power. But when it comes to marijuana legalization, fuck the experts, right? Yeah, we don't need to listen to the experts when we have a coalition of liars at our back, right? So let me go on. That's Newsweek, right? Because let's address all of the coalition of liars. Here we have another thing. Crime rates drop after marijuana dispensaries open nearby. Study finds. Now you can disagree with the publisher of this. This is Marijuana Moment. I came across this in Google. It was in the Google listing. It's not like I visit this website. So here we go, though. The results imply that an additional dispensary in a neighborhood leads to a reduction of 17 crimes per month per 10,000 residents, which corresponds to roughly a 19% decline relative to the average crime rate over the sample period. So wow, so you have another study here indicating that it reduces crime. But Newsweek has to have it, does it increase crime rates? Instead of saying, does it decrease crime rates, which they can answer in the affirmative, yes, it does decrease crime rates, they have to say, does it increase crime rates? Because this headline doesn't really say anything. See, with this headline, crime rates could have stayed the same. But with this one, we can say, oh, look, it doesn't increase it, but we're not giving the reader much. We're not letting them know it decreases the crime rates. But we also have this paper. This is from here's the thing, ncnorml.org. The publisher is, what's the publisher again? It is Reason Foundation. That's actually a brilliant name for a foundation. This foundation is based off of reason and evidence. Remember, guys, don't be anti-science. I love it. The same people who shut down this legalization effort are the same people now who are talking about believing the experts and not being anti-science. So this paper actually, it covers specifically not violent crime, but it covers black market crime. It covers crime related to illegal growing and illegal possession, things like that. And basically, it finds that from this evidence, it is clear that while legalization does not necessarily eliminate illegal production, distribution, and sale of marijuana, it tends to diminish it dramatically. And yes, it does. If you go into the study, you'll find that it diminishes it dramatically. That is a proper set of words. They're not misleading people with those words. And then it also covers effects on other drug use, and it finds that it leads to a reduction in opioid use. So here we go. So this coalition of liars back here who were concerned about public safety, what are they concerned about? They're concerned that violent crime will go down and less people will be dying from overdoses of opioid medication. Come on, man. Be real with yourself, coalition of liars. And then it says, the pro-legalization movement has also been divided by a debate over how to guarantee economic reinvestment in minority communities. Now, this is important to remember. But before we move on, we have to acknowledge this. The pro-legalization movement has been divided? Really? The whole movement? Or is it that there has been a divide between God King Cuomo and the lawmakers that want to legalize it? That's what it really is. The article is going to let us know that later on, or the authors will let us know that later on, but they have to set it up here because they got to prime our brains in order to think that, it's so much more complicated. That's actually the whole pro-legalization movement. Come on, man. So it then goes on to say that these counties in New York are saying that they don't want it, that they're going to opt out of any legalization law, including both populous counties on Long Island, And then more than 40 towns in New Jersey have also declared that they would opt out or have already voted to ban marijuana businesses from opening there. Then do that. You guys want to screw your local people over? Then go for it. Don't take the whole state with you. So, and then, oh, this is brilliant. Look at this. The deception. I mean, it's unreal. How can people read this and not start a protest outside of the New York Times for corrupting the minds of the masses? Okay, because this is causing a lot of deaths. This propaganda is leading to a lot of deaths because it's leading to laws that are not in the public's best interest remaining in place. These laws do lead to deaths. If taking these laws off the books reduces the amount of people who are taking basically synthetic heroin, if it reduces that, then it will reduce those deaths. There's a ton of overdose deaths. I believe in 2018, there was like over 40,000 deaths. Okay? So these people and their propaganda is actually leading to people dying. And that's why I say they should be put to death. But anyway, let's look at this propaganda. There are no models for what New York and New Jersey are trying to do. Really? Oh, really? I could have sworn that there's a whole bunch of states that legalized already. Oh, whoa, oh, wait a second. That's what they're doing. They're going to split the hair like this. Check this out. Of the 10 states that legalized recreational marijuana, only Vermont did so through legislation rather than by ballot initiative. Really? So, the authors of this article, they're saying there's no model. Why? Oh, because of how they legalized. Oh, yeah, these other ones, they legalized it through a referendum, basically, and not through the legislator. How does that make any difference? If the end thing is legalizing recreational marijuana, how does it matter whether they do it through ballot or whether they do it through the electorate? It doesn't at all. But yet, this article, oh, there's no models for what New York and New Jersey are trying to do. Yup, that's why we can't listen to the experts. Because according to these guys, there's no models for this. Unbelievable. So, states that have already legalized marijuana through ballot referendums have run into problems. Oh, really? They ran into problems? Let's see this out. Emergency room visits rose in Colorado. Really? Emergency room visits. You sure this isn't going to say cannabis-related emergency room visits? Well, let's check it out. Here is what it links to. So it links to, CNN. Very trusted. I trust CNN implicitly. Cannabis-related ER visits in Colorado jumped threefold after legalization, study says. So first of all, that shows right there, cannabis-related emergency room visits. I mean, Jesus, there could have been only 10 cannabis-related emergency room visits prior to legalization, and it only went to 30. But yet this right here makes it sound like legalizing marijuana in Colorado created a public health crisis. That all emergency room visits, there were people coming in from emergency rooms all over the place. And also doesn't even say, okay, well, were these emergency room visits just people freaking out from edibles? You know, they take edibles, they feel paranoid, and they go to the emergency room. Do they need to go to the emergency room? Is it life or death? No, they're just paranoid. So, then goes on to say, the black market continued to thrive in California. See, now, this, they don't provide any link. Now, the other article that I said, it didn't specify California, but it did say that that legalizing did create a dramatic reduction. So I don't know what this thing is talking about here. The black market continued to thrive in California. Maybe it's because California put such a huge tax on it that black market weed is still cheaper than the state-approved weed. Okay, in that case, it's a very easy solution. You just lower the taxes on it. And every state saw vast racial disparities in marijuana business ownership. What? How's this a problem? How's this a problem even that the government can fix? What are you going to do? Affirmative action in business ownership? You're going to say, oh, well, too many white people own marijuana dispensaries, so we're going to have to now use tax money to give it to black people or Hispanic people. Come on, man. What is this shit? How is this a problem? How did the authors of this article say, yeah, let's put that in there? Yeah, this is a problem, for sure. Propaganda. Whatever. Move on. Lawmakers in New York and New Jersey had promised to learn from these examples. They set ambitious goals. Ambitious goals or bullshit goals? Ambitious goals or overly complicated goals to complicate the process so that they have an excuse now to not go through with it. This is a great euphemism. Ambitious goals. Addressing racial inequity in the industry, clearing past criminal records for minor drug offenses, and keeping taxes low enough to wipe out the black market, but high enough to generate meaningful revenue. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah, guys, we just want that revenue. We just need to make sure we get that revenue. It's all about the money, and they even acknowledge that in the article, you'll see. It proved a formidable task, and disagreements among activists, opponents, and lawmakers consistently hampered progress. It's like they're repeating themselves. I could have sworn this is like the same exact thing as they said before. Now, okay, and then it just talks about how instead of legalizing marijuana, they're going to increase medical marijuana, because medical marijuana, once again, you still got to go to the state for that. You got to go get approved. The state still has the power there, so of course they would kill recreational marijuana use and just marijuana legalization, period. They'll kill that, but then they'll increase this. In New York, supporters of full legalization have blamed each other. This person's name, I'm not going to say it, at a news conference in Albany on Tuesday, blamed the legislator and the governor who think this issue is no longer urgent. So then it goes on to say, during budget negotiations in March, several lawmakers in Albany received calls from the governor's office describing potential political fallout if marijuana were to be legalized through the budget, according to one person familiar with one such conversation, and one person who heard a conversation between legislators. So here they're blaming Cuomo, and they're saying, oh, but if it's legalized through the budget, there might be, political backlash or political fallout. Great excuse. I can't explain the governor's reasons why he thought that it probably wasn't the right thing to do in the budget. This person said, what? She named herself Miss Peoples Stokes? Wow. And she changed her name to that. The leaders of both the Senate and Assembly said earlier this year that the details might be too complex for a short timeline. Look at that. They got the too complex excuse. The same thing that Cuomo said. So this person was more blunt. The governor walked away from it in the budget. Yada, yada, yada. I don't understand why New York, which claims to be such a progressive and democratic state, doesn't have referendums. Doesn't have it where they can just put it on the ballot for the people to vote. It's very simple. Put on the ballot, put in the news, say in the news, hey, guess what? This year it's going to be on the ballot to legalize. I guarantee you that the turnout in the election will be much higher, and I can guarantee you that people would vote to legalize it. So then it goes on to say that he has said in a couple of press conferences he wants to get this done. Of course, that's just bullshit. Mr. Cuomo, in response, said he bore no responsibility for the delay. Yep, he's got no responsibility. He then blames the lawmakers, and he says that, the lawmakers are asking him to rally the senators, and he says that just goes to show that the senators or the lawmakers in New York don't have their own people under control. Really what it is that the people of New York do not have their politicians under control, because most of the people in New York, they're just too distracted. They're having too much fun going to the bars and drinking, playing games and watching sports, and trying to obtain some kind of celebrity status. It's really pathetic. I know a lot of people in New York or at least a lot of people my age, they don't care at all about politics. There's so many people that are just so apathetic towards politics. They don't get involved in politics, but they don't realize that politics are still getting involved in them, which is amazing, because it's like, yo, you guys pay taxes. Like, how are you guys paying so much in taxes and are so indifferent to what your politicians are doing? Maybe some kind of learned helplessness or something. Or maybe the product of the 10,000-hour indoctrination camp known as public school, right? So now it appears that they still don't have the votes. Miss Peoples. So then the article says also this. So Miss Peoples and this other person have acknowledged the resistance to their original bill from both the governor and some legislative colleagues. A particular disagreement involved their proposal to set aside fixed percentages of marijuana tax revenue for communities most harmed by the war on drugs. Mr. Cuomo's office had suggested looser language. See, that's what it is. They want to... See, I'm sure that these neighborhoods that they deem were most affected by the war on drugs, I'm sure it's neighborhoods that they have investments in. They're like, we wanted to go to this neighborhood over here where all of our property's at, where now if you bring that tax money, it's going to make all the real estate there go up and make us very rich people. That's what it really is. Well, at least that's what I think it really is. So, In response, the lawmakers plan to introduce a revised bill that would preserve benchmarks for reinvestment in minority communities while granting the governor more control over the nature of those reinvestments. So the governor, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll reinvest in those communities, but I want to govern the nature of those reinvestments because I'm the God King." It's intended to win the support of the governor as well as colleagues who are still a little concerned. It's very simple. Just tell those colleagues that are concerned to listen to the experts. Look at the studies. Listen to the experts. Like you guys say all the time, listen to the experts. Follow the science. Don't be anti-scientific. Still, even with the revised proposal, Ms. Kruger said the question of who would control and receive marijuana revenue would remain central and divisive. See, it's all about who's going to be able to control the money. Day one, this is her quote, "Day one, when we started to draft this bill, I told everyone the ultimate fight would be over the money and who gets it," she said. "And the last day that we come to a closure and sign a bill, I will tell people the fight was over where the money went." Booyakasha! Amazing! They actually managed to put some truth in this article. So in New Jersey, hopes for legalization this year seemed even further out of reach. On Thursday, both Murphy and the Assembly Speaker conceded that they might need to resort to putting legislation on the ballot. Why not do that? What do you mean? How is this something that you have to concede? Why is this something that you didn't do already? Put it on the ballot. New Jersey has a ballot initiative like that. Put it on the ballot. Very simple. Problem solved. And then it goes on to say, quote, "The referendum has always been out there as an option," Mr. Murphy said at a news conference in Trenton. "Only one state has done this legislatively, and that's Vermont. We have felt that this is a better way to go. It takes more courage." What? It takes more courage. It's a tough vote for many, and we understand that. Like, wait, what? I don't understand. I do understand how these people get away with it. It's the masses, the ignorant masses. So he added, this Governor Murphy, he added, however, that he planned to sit down later that day with Mr. Coughlin and Stephen M. whatever, the Senate president, to discuss the future of marijuana legalization. Less than an hour later, Mr. Sweeney skipped the meeting. Beautiful. And that's the end of the article. Oh my god, there's 138 comments? Incredible. Oh, this is a great comment. "It would be interesting to know how many of those that are beating the nonsensical public safety drum overindulge in alcohol on a regular basis. My bet is quite a few, if not most. Hypocrisy at its best." Jesus Christ. Yeah, if you want to talk about a public safety thing, look at alcohol, man. How many people die from drunken drivers, from people who are drinking and driving? Jesus Christ. Pathetic, pathetic. Just a pathetic New York Times article. This is exactly why George Carlin said, "There's a big club, you're not in it." This is further proof that the people in your government don't care about you, and that the people who write your papers, these authoritative news outlets that Facebook and YouTube just love to put at the top of the trending and love to jam down your throat, that they don't give a shit about you or me or the public safety. I'll see you fellow slaves in the next video.